Welcome to Symposium of Wild Hearts. I am your guide and the creator, Aisha Ophelia, and today I'm here with the lovely Lyna Rose. Thank you so much for being here. Lyna is an author, a coach, and a beautiful representation of the divine feminine. Today we're going to be talking about sacred partnership, the idea of calling in your beloved, and how much vulnerability plays a huge part in that role. So welcome, Lyna.
Thank you. I am honored to be part of this. Thank you so much for asking me to participate and share my experience and wisdom that I have worked hard to earn. So thank you.
Good, and it feels so nice because we're recording on Mother's Day. So to me, it just feels like this energy of unconditional love is enveloping this conversation. I'm really excited about chatting to you. One thing that I start all of these sessions with is just a moment to get centered in the heart. So in a second, I'm going to ask you to flutter your eyes closed. For those who are listening or watching, please do so as much as possible. We're just going to take a moment and close our eyes. And just let out a deep sigh. It's just a sign to the nervous system that you've arrived, that you're safe, that all is well. And so in this space, we're just giving our heart time to speak to us. If you'd like to place your hand over your heart, feel free to do so. And we're just getting curious and we're listening. And today we're listening with the ears of, does the heart have a message for me? Especially when it pertains to relationships and even your relationship with yourself, which is the one that really sets the tone for all others. Just listening and being curious through the lens of a loving mother to their child, a newborn child. Just imagine that sort of love for yourself as you're getting curious about what's here for you. And so if you'd like more time in this space, feel free to pause this, but we're just going to take one big deep breath together and sigh it out. So just a big deep breath in and a big sigh. And when you're ready, just fluttering your eyes back open. Perfect, welcome back. And so before we get into your story, usually this is the part where most people would read the author's or the speaker's bio, but instead I wanted to do a little game, and it's almost like 20 questions, but it's only 11. And what it is like, it's just rapid fire. As soon as I ask you the question, the idea is that you just let your just the first thing that comes into play. Don't think about it, don't overthink it. But this one's special because it's the relationship edition. So are you ready?
I'm so ready. Bring it on.
Okay, so number one, what's an obvious red flag in a relationship?
A man asking me to pay for a first date.
There you go, ladies, you heard it. What do men want more than anything?
To feel at home, to feel appreciated, to feel like a hero in the space of their woman.
Oh, wow. What do women want more than anything?
To feel safe, to feel protected, to feel seen, to feel taken care of, while preserving their unique strength and gifts and purpose in life.
Oh my God, that was amazing. Let's see. Who's a good example of a relationship to you?
Oh my gosh, man, that's a tough one. I feel like there are so many of them. Probably my uncle and my aunt, they've been married for 25 years and they've gone through many storms, but they're still committed to each other and still so in love, and they're still really playful. So yes, my uncle and aunt back in France.
I love it. What's your favorite smell?
Portrait of a Lady.
What's your favorite flower?
Black rose.
How does your heart feel right now?
Grateful and warm, empathetic.
I love it.
Compassionate.
What is love?
The infinite life force, the infinite presence of eternity that moves through everything and that always wants to come back through us, for us.
I love it. What's your favorite body part on a man?
his chest.
Okay.
Thinking of my man, I'm like, yeah, yes,
What was Mother Mary's first word?
I love you.
That's so good. Those are the questions.
Surrender, to surrender, and it was the ultimate act of love. And it's funny because I actually took my daughters to their church this morning, and my role is to embody love regardless of religious denomination. I trust that people who are exactly where they need to be on the spiritual path. But at the end, I thought, why did they not mention Mother Mary? She was the ultimate mother.
Yeah.
She was the greatest mother of them all. So thank you for asking. She's dear to me.
Yeah. I knew that was going to be part of our conversation. So when I was thinking about you, that question just seemed like it'd be a fun one. Okay, so thank you for doing that. That's a great way just to get the energy flowing. Your answers were so divine. They felt so right on for our conversation. And so I think a good part to start, for those who don't know you, her bio will be below and all her contact information as well. But what got you on this journey of, you can incorporate Mother Mary into it. You can talk about your own personal journey of sacred relationship, but that's the topic. What was your journey coming back home to yourself like?
So I was blessed with having the complex of an absent father. I never knew my dad, and my mom abandoned me at a very early age. So although those were not the perfect start for life, they forced me to become the heroine of my own journey, and they forced me to go on a lifelong healing purpose. So I was brought up by my great grandparents, and then I went through a series of very abusive foster homes when I was a teenager. When I was 20 years old, I decided to leave my old life behind, my old identity as a reject of society behind, so that I could begin again in the United States. I'm originally from France. And I got married, had kids. I became Mormon. I was Mormon for 11 years. And in the fall of 2011, everything came falling down. I got divorced. I left my faith, left my friends, and kind of was forced to crack myself open to look at why I had that chronic pain. And no matter what was happening in my life, I could not find resting happiness with myself. I was always blaming everything around me for my unhappiness, trying to grab fulfillment and satisfaction, but nothing could nurture me and fulfill me for longer than a day or two.
Yeah.
So then I started to church hop. I went back to Catholic Church for a few months, looked into Buddhism, and nothing felt quite home. I always had faith that God existed. I always had that since I was probably about 5 years old. And then I came across Gabrielle Bernstein in the summer of 2012. I was recovering from divorce, from another heartbreak, and from really kind of losing everything that I had. And she said something, it was a Tuesday morning, it was the first week of August in the summer of 2012. She said something that just dropped into my soul and splashed it with truth and love. So then I was guided to study A Course in Miracles, which I studied for and taught for about 3 and 4 years. And what A Course does is that it brings up everything that is unconscious or your limiting beliefs about yourself, and it teaches you to retrain your perception to perceive everything with love rather than with fear. So that guided me to my intuition, to really have a solid relationship with my sense of intuition and internal wisdom. And then about 3 years ago, Mary Magdalene showed up. I was doing a painting workshop at a friend's house in Connecticut. I lived in New York for 15 years. And I was painting a goddess. And then my friend said, oh, by the way, Mary Magdalene is here for you. And at the time, I kind of knew who she was, but I thought, okay, whatever, it's nice. But then it's almost like a door opened, because she stayed on my mind, in my heart, until I began to study her life. And 2 years later, I packed up my New York City life, my 2 kids, with 2 suitcases, and moved to the south of France to study her life and finish my first book.
Okay, so that brings us up to current time almost, right?
Exactly.
Okay, wow. First of all, I have to pause you because You know, just having followed you on Instagram, that's how our relationship began. Sorry, one second, my headpiece fell out. The words that you write are so solid and there is so much truth in them. And now I see just from hearing your story how you got where you were. And so you said something about resting happiness, and that really
Yeah.
dropped into my soul. I think that's something, before we go further, I'd love to
Yeah.
explore with you. And I guess my question would be, okay, so you came into this world through parents that didn't give you the love and attention that you desired. So you know, the foster family, you went through all of that. How did it happen that you started to take responsibility for your life and really figure out the resting happiness? Was it through the collapse of your marriage? Was it, you know, was it all these cumulative things? That's a big, those words just really stuck with me.
Dating a psychologist was
Okay.
ultimately was the culminating point, because at the time I had been spiritual for about 3 years. I was on a spiritual path, but at the time, any negative emotions that I did not perceive as being spiritual, I would push them away,
Yeah.
because I had to be that perfect spiritual teacher.
Mm.
Until I realized that I kept running away from love. I could not open myself up, and he was a perfect mirror. You know,
Yeah.
life is going to bring us the relationship that need to highlight the strength of our soul, and also the shadows that hide our light, that disconnect us from our soul, what gets in the way. And he
Yeah.
said, you are so afraid of vulnerable intimacy and you don't even see it.
Mm.
And I knew he was right, but I was still so covered in shame, that conditioned shame that I grew up with, that
Yeah.
unless I was perfect, I would go back to being that little girl who was bullied and who was good for nothing.
Mm.
So then after that, after, you know, dating and having failed relationship after failed relationship, because mind you, we are hardwired for human relationships. It's, you know,
Yeah.
it's in our, you know, human psyche, in our physiological hardwiring for millennia now. So by the time also I thought, oh, I can do without, I don't need a man. And I was in my wounded masculine for most of the time. So what would I attract? A lot of feminine guys who would never drive me, who would never drive to me, who would never even split the cost of dinner. I remember once, and I mean, that was like, that was like literally what really cracked me open. Again, I was with my third feminine. I would not have a boyfriend, girlfriend, but we're dating.
Uh-huh.
And we woke up on my birthday. We spent the day at work on my birthday. He wished me a happy birthday through a text later on, didn't mention anything in the morning, did not give me a card, nothing. And then I paused the next day. I was really heartbroken. I thought, how did I bring this upon myself?
Yeah.
And I would say that taking personal, you know, responsibility is the most powerful mindset you will have to turn your life around. And it was taught by A Course in Miracles, because we take responsibility for perception, to take our power back instead of projecting our power out there and letting ourselves being victims. But to go back to your question, I think that the main reason why I was so unfulfilled and chronically miserable during my marriage throughout my entire 20s, that my unlived life was bubbling right underneath my conscious awareness. And at the time, I had no awareness of having a purpose. But unless we live our calling, unless we tap into the life that is waiting for us to live, to manifest, we're going to be chronically miserable. There will be always something that is missing, almost like an ache within our heart and our soul that we don't understand.
Yeah.
So when I began really tapping into my calling and serving others, that hole got filled. Now I can even, you know, remember I took a walk with my man last weekend, and I love being in nature. And before, there was no superficial fulfilling in taking a walk, so I had no interest. I always had to be filled with shopping and clothes and attention. But now being in nature, but with myself and my soul and the divine, is my favorite experience.
That's so beautiful. Um, Okay, so I definitely want to come back to the wounded masculine, but I'd love to hear, you took so many risks. I don't know how long it took you to decide that that ache was so strong that you would rather face the unknown than be in something that wasn't working for you. So you did that. You moved, you got your kids and you moved, and then Mary Magdalene called and you moved back to France. So catch us up to what happened there when you began to study her story more in depth, because I find that it's happened to me, and it's happened to a lot of friends, where someone will tell you about it and you kind of know about it, you don't quite
Right.
understand, and then yeah, there's that, it just keeps coming
Mm.
back. And for you, you actually went there and you studied. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I think that the soul has various stages
Mm-hmm.
and stages of learning, of development, and we cannot rush the soul.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot rush it and when and how we are going to learn what we need to learn.
Yeah.
So a year before, I wanted to connect with my divine feminine, but I didn't know how. I was looking for resources, but nothing really made sense until I actually went there. Now, I'm not saying that it has to be the case for every woman, uh, but by being there and having some pretty traumatizing experiences with with a mystery school while I was there, I realized I was never going to allow another teacher, another spiritual teacher, to take my power again. And that voice that had been telling me for a long time that I had all my wisdom was true.
Yeah,
Was
that's such a powerful message for right now, for
let
everyone
me
that's
tell you
listening.
something, Alicia. My soul, when I drove away, when I had to drop off that teacher at the train station, I could not remember the last time my soul felt that small and that crushed. So I actually drove, I was guided to drive to the tiny little village on the sea where Mary Magdalene arrived with her sister Martha and
Mm-hmm.
Lazarus. And I spent the day cleansing myself, and her presence hovers over the ocean. It's so powerful. And
Mm.
from that day forward, I would sit in meditation, and I often have my phone and I would take notes and receive everything that I needed to receive. Now, at first, the voice is faint, but
Yeah.
then you begin to receive more sentences and wisdom. And it's literally like a tie line, like a lifeline to your soul and to the sacred. And when you have that, you feel so nourished that whatever else may happen is no longer as relevant as how well you can mother and love yourself and have so much, such a great source, a well of unconditional love. Because when you experience that, you change forever. And that's what happened to me. I would go
Mm.
up to her cave every week. She spent the last 35 years of her life doing healings, meditating, and praying in the cave in the middle of a mountain in southern France.
Mm-hmm.
And her presence is in every tree, it is in the
Mm.
forest. When you experience that, your whole body takes it in. You come back to your body, you come back to the great mother, you come back to nature, and that bonding is unavoidable. You,
Mm-hmm.
you begin to bond with your body, and that's something also that I learned that was huge. Before, I was trying to move away from my body because I wanted to get to the fifth or sixth dimension because I was a spirit, I was not a body.
Yeah.
Well, I go to Provence, and she said, actually, no, you're here to come back into your body so that your soul and your body may become as, glove in a hand. May
Oh,
move.
it's perfect. Yeah, I feel like that is another message of Mother Mary, is very much about embodiment and that coming home, because so many of us who identify as like empaths or whatever, yeah, we just want to escape the rigors of the physical reality. And the mother is here reminding you that you're unconditionally loved through all of those experiences. So that's, I love that insight. Sorry, I interrupted the
No,
flow
that's
too.
perfect. I'm actually, I need to pause and there's just so much I want to share.
Yeah, I
But
know. It's such a deep thing. And actually, a few years back, I didn't understand this. It was kind of during my, what I consider initiation phase. I was working with a healer and she was like, you know what? I was just in France. I was in the cave and I was praying and I'm just led to give this to you. And at the time I had no idea. It was just a rock. And I was just like, I knew it was a beautiful gift and I kept it throughout the years. But then really over the last couple of years have really, the depth of what she had given me and the invitation that was given to me at that point was suddenly not lost on me. And so I love it that this is part of your story and the conversation And one of the key words that I feel with you is this vulnerability. Like you're able to share from this vulnerable place. And that was a key of what we talked about before, that you felt brought in your partner. And there's a lot of people who are at this phase where, yeah, they've dated all the wounded masculine and they've been there, done that, and they want to experience something deeper. Let's dive into how vulnerability is a key part of that humanity, that darkness, that the parts of us that we don't want to be seen, or where we feel kind of tender, right?
Right. So I think that for me, it's a foundation, right? Is building a foundation, a spiritual foundation within yourself, so that you're so deeply anchored to your soul and to that space of love, that whether you are loved or rejected or, by a man, doesn't matter, because you are so confident and in love with who you are, that you know that the right person is going to show up. And if someone is not a match, it's just, it's not about you anymore. It's just that the puzzle pieces do not match. So I took a year last year. I mean, I went on a few dates here and there, but I really received the guidance to take a break from serious dating, so I could really kind of carve out all the infections of my psyche, of my heart, to get them out of me. That way they will no longer be unconscious forces in my relationships. And I think that sometimes we think that healing is so complicated, and it's a process. It's going to take a lifetime. But as soon as you extract it from within yourself, whether it is through journaling, with a therapist, or just bringing it to your awareness when you meditate, as soon as it moves out of you, it's no longer as powerful over you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So from that space, and I was nurturing my calling, my writing, and that I feel for me that is such a powerful cornerstone, because when we are anchored and what we are here to give, we feel so powerful. And when we are in our creative zone, in the zone of our calling, nothing can touch us.
Yeah.
So then that also infuses enough confidence into you that you can show your vulnerability, because it is the soul wanting, desiring, and accepting to be seen for what it is. This vulnerability is letting your soul be seen. So when I did all of that work in southern France, and looking back at how far I had come, I'm like, my wounds have been gifts. They are decorations of what I have gone through so far, that way I could help others heal themselves and know that is a great life awaiting them. There's nothing to be ashamed of.
It's so true. Whenever you were talking, I really just had to sit up straight, because when you are in your purpose, it's like you're untouchable. When you set that strong foundation of knowing yourself in a vulnerable way and being willing to look at your wounds as gifts, it does really change things. And one thing that's been feeling, I don't know, maybe you can help me work this out. It's a little personal coaching, but I've been feeling kind of icky about, there's so many books about calling in the one, and I think they have good principles, because they're you become who you attract who you are. So it is kind of working on yourself, but it feels like recently I've just been I give up. I know what my purpose is. I feel passionate about that, but my picker is broken. I really want to give the reins to spirit. I really want to give myself over to this invisible force and not be so sure about who I'm calling in. Does that make sense? So many people are looking for it, but it almost seems like a red flag for me, because I'm oh, who are they going to attract in, because they want it so desperately.
Right.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I'm trying to think last year, when I moved back to the States, I knew that I was going to meet someone really special. I didn't know when. And I arrived in September, and I gave myself 1 year. I said, I know, because of the work I've done, that within a year, I'm going to meet my man. It's done. It's a done deal. So because I made that statement into the universe, I told life, I know he's already here. And because of the energy that I was putting forth as a result of the inner work that I had done, and the confidence that came along from, moving to Provence and finishing my book and doing something I don't think was possible, he arrived 2 months later. And I remember I was driving on a freeway back to Salt Lake City, and I envisioned the whole state of Utah. And I imagined almost like waves, like little waves of love spreading throughout the entire state, so that my love, my vibration, my frequency of love would reach the man who was meant to be mine.
I love that. I love that. And I love that it seems like you had an intention and you said it, but it wasn't something that you worried about every day. It seems like you were on your path, you're writing, you just know, it's going to happen. So that feels different than kind of what I've been witnessing. So thank you for.
So, and I used to be that way, for especially at the beginning of my path, I knew I wanted to be independent and solely focused on my work, but my emotional pain would not let me. So, if a man, would not respect me, or, would cancel a date and then last minute say, oh, actually, I want to go out with you because he was, bored or wanted to finish his night. My soul knew that I would disrespect myself by going, but my emotional wounds pulled me back towards that guy.
Wow.
So until I did, again, it's almost like clearing out the infection, bringing it out, man by man and situation by situation, forgiving my mother, forgiving my father, and doing the inner work. Then what replaced that emotional neediness was emotional safety with myself. My standards increased. And what was beautiful is that the type of man I naturally attracted, that naturally came into my life, changed. It's incredible to see when I look back, and I'm grateful for every beautiful experience. When I look back 4 or 5 years ago to, the men I've attracted for maybe the past year or two, it's like day and night.
Yeah, night and day.
Day and night.
You did the work.
Yeah, because I changed my dynamics. So, when I went back onto online dating, when I moved back here back in September, I wasn't worried because I knew my standards, and I knew that, they would reflect who I was unconsciously. And because I was not driven by my emotional needs, there was enough distance where I could observe and allow a man to show me who he was without jumping with both feet. He had to show me that he could be a king so that he could have this queen here.
Oh my God, I love it. And I think so many of us are ready for this kind of mature love. Like we, used to be wild and free. And if someone was around and they showed you the right amount of attention, you would do so. But there's so many of us that are coming into this time in our lives where we feel way more mature, that we've started this excavation process, which, by the way, I want to go back to, because I think there might be a lot of people who are in that process, but I can see how that would be. Yeah, so let's talk about the excavation process. You talked about, being willing to bring up what's inside, look at it, feel it. What are some, maybe a story or an anecdote or anything, a tip for someone who's in that process? Because it's tough, it's tough to really look at what you've created in a sense.
Right, I'm trying to think of which instance. Well, for example, the stigma of being a perfect spiritual teacher. And for a while, now I guess I'm calling myself a teacher of the divine feminine because I'm an eternal student first. And I teach it by demonstrating and by sharing my journey transparently as possible. But I remember after, my ex-boyfriend psychologist told me that. And I looked at myself and I thought, why do I feel I need to be perfect right now? And then I went back to my teenage years, went back to the times when my foster mom told me that I was good for nothing, that I was stupid, that I would end up being like my mother. And that was ingrained in my head for years, that I would end up being an alcoholic. I would probably end up on the street prostituting myself. So then the psyche is always trying to seek balance and also to protect itself. So what did I do? I went the opposite way. I thought, well, if I make myself look perfect and if I force perfection out of myself, then I will be loved and appreciated, and then I will not become like my mother. So once I went back and actually gave back those projections, so my foster mom's projections, once I realized they were her projections, I gave them back to her, so that way I could actually come back to who I was as a person out independently of her projections. Come back to a whole person and see that I was innocent, that it was not personal. Because what happened is that as a child, the psyche will take it personally. It doesn't know how to dissociate what someone is telling us, you know, how bad or worthless we are with who we are. We believe, you know, like our brain takes it in as being the only truth.
Yeah.
You know, so it's undoing those layers by going back to those experiences during meditation, writing them down, forgiving those people by realizing that they must have experienced some type of trauma to do that, to project that onto us.
Exactly.
Does that make sense? And
Totally.
praying as well to be guided, you know, and doing it from a space of compassion, because I would inflict more judgment on myself. I should be further along, you know, I should be practicing those principles perfectly by now. It was like I was 2 or 3 years into it. And I realized that it was actually like defeating the point of the spiritual practice, which is to unpack the soul. It's to unpack the soul that we can stay connected to it.
Yeah. And I love something you said earlier about you cannot rush the soul. You know, there's so many, we have so many distractions and we're looking at so many different people, but whenever I just really tap in and tune into me and I trust the perfection of my timing and what's showing up, you know, even the good and the bad things, I get that message loud and clear every time. It's like, well, A, there's no reason to rush, and B, you know, the soul is going to take its time to really learn. So thank you for allowing us to remember that important piece, because that could be a big source of judgment and pain. Well, haven't I learned this lesson? Well, haven't I peeled this onion enough? And, you know, can I be done with this?
You know, it gets easier. Another tip I really want to share that's important, has been huge. So whenever my old self, my, you know, my psychological system would begin perceiving a threat of abandonment, either it was that my boyfriend liked, you know, a couple of girls' images on Instagram, or whether he was sharing with his ex-girlfriend, then what happens is that my body would go into panic mode. My heart would start, you know, beating really fast. My brain would tell me, run away because you're about to be abandoned. And I would do it every time. I would find a reason that seemed at the time really objective and true. And over time, especially when it happened with my current boyfriend, I realized that it was just my self-protective system trying to protect me from being hurt again.
Yeah.
So now when that happens, and I feel my solar plexus get really hurt, like it contracts and gets really tight. The best thing you can do is first to wait 24 hours to take any action, because before we just break up with them and push them away, because that was the only way, you know, that sickness, you know, the sensation of being abandoned would go away, was by pushing it away. It was just safe again. Don't do anything for 24 hours. Now I wait. When I get triggered, I don't take any action. I don't react. I wait. I give myself 24 hours, and then I focus to my breath, because it brings me back to the present moment rather than being pulled by what my past is telling me. And now when something happens, I see it right away. Now I know, I'm like, okay, this is what's happening. You know, that's just, you know, my pattern, my learned pattern. And it's not as powerful as it used to be.
Yeah, that's so true. And it kind of goes back to that still small voice. Once you start to trust it, you'll understand what's happening when it's happening. And that can be with your intuition. That could be when you're out on a date. It's just one of those things where when you give yourself the time to tune in, you'll start to know and hear those voices. So I want to, okay, because it's Mother's Day, there is this energy of unconditional love. You are such a good representation of the divine feminine and Mother Mary. She's so pleased. I'm so pleased. What message do you think Mother Mary would have for people who are endeavoring to really call in this mature kind of love by being these humans, by being these people, whether it's men watching, women watching? What do you think?
I think that it's important to place understanding before judgment, before reaction.
Ooh, okay.
Really make that a priority, because understanding is a gate, is a door to compassion and to healing and to bringing people together.
Okay. Would that be the same sort of as, I mean, I look at it as just being curious instead of coming in with an immediate judgment. It's being curious about what's showing up, that person.
Understanding towards our mother, for example, you know, everything changed for me in the way I related to my mom when I went back into her childhood and understood why she abandoned me. You
Yeah.
know, her mom, she was in a coma when she was 12 years old, and she was starting to wake up. And her mother, she heard her mother say, "Oh, it's too bad that she did not stay in coma. It's too bad she's waking up." So of course she's going to be traumatized, and if her soul did not have enough strength to heal itself whole,
Mm-hmm.
she's going to project it unless she's
Yeah.
guided, you know, to heal
Yeah.
herself. And so I think that understanding is the key to removing the psychic and emotional weight that's burdening your soul, so that you can truly rise as your own individual self, and therefore have all the space you need inside yourself for the love and the compassion that you need to pour back into the world, because it has to fill us first, then we can pour it back out.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to get filled before you pour out. Otherwise, you're pouring from an empty cup, and that's not good.
Exactly. And to really live in a way that honors every expression of life, that there's
Mm-hmm.
no one who matters less or more than the next person, because I know that's how they lived. I know that Mother Mary served, that she put herself last many times because she wanted to make sure that everyone was fed, taken care of, nurtured. She was the mother of Jesus, but she was also the mother of humanity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, it was in her cells, it was in her body. She never, you know, she would exhaust herself just so that she could be there for everyone else. You know, when Jesus would tell her, you know, you need to rest, you need to eat now and take care of yourself. She's like, no, because, you know, I'm here to mother everyone, and be that embodiment of the love that is love, that is love. That's a source that we don't even comprehend. When we tap into the finest expression of love, of divine love, you know, it's like the most beautiful song that sings through our soul and that people see and feel when they're, you know, around us. You know, it speaks louder than words when you really embody it every day and practice it.
That's so beautiful.
Your cells become that love.
Nice. One thing I do want to tap into, I'm skipping around a little bit, but so the idea that you are in a partnership that you consider a divine, sacred partnership, what does that look like? You said that you had set, you know, you set the time, and within 2 months, this person came in. Where are you today with your divine partnership?
Ooh, okay. So it's actually the longest relationship I've had since I've been divorced. I've been
Uh-huh.
6 years ago. I got divorced 7 years ago, actually, almost. That's crazy. You know, the first few months were challenging because our connection was so strong. And we definitely had defense mechanisms that went up because we didn't understand why we felt so strongly for each other at first. But what we
Mm-hmm.
both had in common was the willingness to be a space of compassion for the wounds of the other one, knowing that everyone has some type of emotional baggage,
Yeah.
and being a mirror of who they are beyond those wounds.
Oh,
And
I love that.
I,
I love that.
you know, so now again, now there are limits, there are standards. That night, you know, I almost didn't go out with him.
Uh-huh.
It almost did not happen. We were supposed to meet on a Saturday night around 7 p.m. I didn't know where, I don't know the exact time. Saturday afternoon comes around, hadn't heard from him. 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m. comes around, nothing. So I'm like, all right,
Mm.
supposed to meet in an hour, haven't heard from him. No way. So I go back on Bumble and I said, well, I guess it wasn't meant to be. And 5 minutes later, I'm like, you know what? Actually, I'm going to match him. And, you know, it is what it is. Just wasn't meant to be. I'm going to go home and write. You know, I was like, it was right before I had to turn in my manuscript. So I go home, change, sit down, about to write. He finds me on Facebook and, you know, messages me. I'm like, you know, it's letting someone know of the time and place in a timely manner is basic courtesy. I guess it wasn't meant to be, but good luck. And then
Yeah.
I you know, I kind of sat back and thought, okay, if you asked again, something told me give him a second chance. And he tried again to take me out that night. And I'm saying, okay, these are my standards, and they're not for every man. But if you will accept and honor them, then I will meet within 20 minutes. Otherwise, we'll leave it as it
Oh,
is. And I wish you the
uh-huh.
best. He said, I swear to the heavens that I will never mess up again. And we met. and the rest is history. And I think that
Mm,
for me, my job as an embodiment and as a divine feminine partner is to nourish myself emotionally and hold hands with my wounds, with my triggers, so that I heal myself and I do the inner work. So when we are together, there might be 5% of my wounds left, or my doubts, or my fear, but I'm not projecting 100% of my wounds onto him.
yeah, yeah. I love it that it feels like you started the relationship out on such a firm foundation of where you were with, these are my standards. They're not for everybody, but if you can, uphold them, then I will give you a second chance. And I mean, there's the unconditional love piece, and there's the stating where you're at in the moment. And that's huge.
Yeah. I think you have to have unconditional love towards yourself, because then you will always honor your boundaries and your standards first and foremost. And a quality man wants a woman who honors herself to that level, because it's going
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
reflect how you feel about yourself.
Can you say that again? A quality man.
What did I say? Okay, a quality man wants a
A,
woman who honors herself first and foremost, because that sends him the signal that she has integrity, she respects and deeply honors herself, and therefore he in turn, cherishes her and respects her as that precious treasure of feminine love and space. Whereas I remember the time when I did not choose myself first, then the men who chose me did not, respect me or treat me like a queen, because I did not treat myself as such. So why would they?
yeah. Oh my God, I need all your books. You're so good. I feel like I could talk to you forever about this. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your heart. It just comes from such a place of strength and beauty and unconditional love. So I'm asking everyone this final question. Unless you have anything else to share, please let me know. But it's the question I'm asking people is, what happens when you decide to not play by the rules anymore?
Oh, which rules?
The rules of society, the rules of, and even the false rules that we're given as women around relationships. I think that's the question that I would ask you, is like, what happens when we don't play by the relationship book that we're given? We really, listen to our own personal sovereignty about what's right for us.
I don't follow well, because I follow the rules of my soul, because I know that everything will fall into place perfectly as long as I live true to myself. I know the pain of living behind a mask and, trying to live in such a way that pleases men first instead of pleasing my soul and who I am as a woman, as a lover of humanity, as lover of the divine, as a mystic. When I follow that, then everything falls into place, or I have enough faith that, will sustain me through things that might occur that were not planned, or disappointment. But when I lean outside of my own soul, outside of my truth, and live outside of my soul, then that's when the winds of life, are really going to take me down. And I'm going to feel so disconnected. Yeah.
Mm,
But yeah,
thank
I
you.
always got that image of really living inside the boundaries of your truth, of who you are, because then that inspires others to do the same. And that will really make most men fall madly in love with you, as long as you live firmly planted in your soul and your sovereignty as a woman.
I love it. And it's the ultimate gift, because it's like, become who you are, and then stop living behind masks, become who you are, and that divine partnership will present itself to you.
And
So
that's a beauty. I think
thank
that's
you.
what
Thank you so
makes.
much for sharing your wisdom.
Welcome.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. It broke up a little
No,
bit.
I really feel that the most brilliant way to let our beauty shine through is the beauty of our soul. I think that really when your soul radiates wisdom and self-acceptance of everything, I think that is the most irresistible experience for any man.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it makes me irresistible to myself. So I would imagine that it has that effect on who you're trying to attract. So again, thank you so much. You're so earthly and grounded, as well as just mystical and magical. It's obvious that you've done the work. So you're writing a second book. Tell people how they can interact with your first book and where they can find you.
Okay, I have it here. Actually, it's funny. Enlighten Your Life. And basically, this is a book of universal prayers and visualizations and affirmations for challenging times. So you can, find me on lynarose.com. You can find my book on Amazon. It was endorsed by Marianne Williamson as well and other wonderful peeps. And, for example, there's a prayer here, prayer to feel complete.
Oh, yes. Will you read us a prayer, whichever one you open to?
Read us a prayer. So prayer basically is reorganizing our thoughts so that the will, the actions, and the wisdom of the divine can drop into our soul without any limits and without any barriers. That's all a prayer is, reorganization. So that we have a straight tunnel, tie line into the sacred. Okay, so I would love for you guys to close your eyes. That way we can turn our awareness into our inner world, which holds an ocean of wisdom, of compassion, and of release from what no longer serves you and holds you back as an empowered soul. Prayer to feel complete. Dear source of compassion, I feel incomplete with too many breaches in my self-awareness. I have allowed experiences from the past to blemish my view of self. I am ready today to reclaim my forgotten parts. I welcome the vocation of recreating myself from the rough strokes of my soul. I am the sovereign of my persona. I consciously decide what enters and departs my mind. I shine love upon the shadows of my psyche so that they may become healing suns. I am willing to rebirth myself into a whole person who finds herself worthy of the most infinite unconditional love and radiance. My soul holds many gems of wisdom and projects for me and for the world. And I place my life into the hands of the sacred realms of love. And so it is. Amen.
So it is. Thank you. That was beautiful. You have a way with words. Thank you so much for sharing. That's the perfect way to wrap up this session. And until next time, thank you so much, Lyna Rose.
Thank you. Love you guys.